All right, so we're back. A little late in the week, but it happens. Probably better that we did because, well, I don't know if you caught Tucker, but things are getting incredibly spicy in the battleground states.
Okay, hold on. I gotta stop you there at the very beginning here with something important. See,
Are you gonna
according to
fart?
Twitter, that's not far off. According to Twitter, and this is very important, according to Twitter, there is no evidence of widespread fraud in Maricopa County's 2020 presidential election results, according to USA Today, AP, and factcheck.org, even though factcheck.org hasn't said shit about it.
Well, they're just getting out ahead of it.
Was this
Just
on
they're,
the
they're
Twitter?
so on top of it that they haven't said anything about it yet.
Oh
See, I
yeah, yeah.
have
This is
not. I haven't seen anything from them yet.
These are the two things that were funny. If you were looking at the Maricopa County and trending, and you clicked
Mm.
on it, that's what showed up at the top, and that was the summary in the
Yeah, and
the
then
first picture.
they link to factcheck.org,
And then
which,
which didn't have
eh,
shit. And
yeah.
then where's my screen cap?
Boy, they didn't
Here's my
even
screen
bother
cap.
with the no, no, no. It wasn't the software wasn't acid wipe. The software was bleach bit. So obviously that was a very different thing. So they're not even going with that, huh?
Right.
Wow, impressive.
But remember, guys, you should donate now because facts matter according to factcheck.org.
Well, it's kind of weird because I don't have any of that stuff. So when I go to click the topics to follow or trending or whatever, I've got
Uh-huh.
something about Jeffrey Epstein. Apparently, that's trending.
Oh no, this was
So
earlier today. This
ah,
isn't right now.
Yeah, they don't want to let this stuff keep trending because,
Now,
the more
I
eyes that
bet
go on it,
you,
the worse.
I bet you, if let's see if I back up far enough. Here it is. Yeah, here's. I'll go ahead and just copy and paste this. And why don't I try and do an archive while that's still showing up where it is?
Yeah, I'll put this as the trend search for Maricopa County if anybody wants to follow up just to see what it'll reveal, which will be interesting as time passes as well because this is going to be fascinating, we'll
This was
say.
saved 8 hours ago. No, I want to save this shit right now. Who knows? Maybe the message is targeted towards logged in users of a certain persuasion. We'll see.
Well, they do have a message to push, much like we've learned about the White House lately and Facebook. It seems that
Oh my
message
God.
pushing that's kind of a thing now.
Yeah,
That the White House
the
has
White
just kind
House.
of taken off their mask and said, "Oh yeah, no, 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 we're gonna go ahead and be in control of the media." Yeah, I
yeah,
know.
that
We
Well,
was.
we
they
accused
didn't
the last
control it.
administration of
They
doing
weren't in
Well,
this.
control. But what
I
they're
will.
doing though is fully cooperating in a very
Right, and
in
if
a classically fascist manner.
Yeah,
if they are
absolutely.
using Facebook or attempting to encourage censorship on Facebook in any way, shape, or form, that is the upside to this is they are going to basically trigger First Amendment violations and the First Amendment violations that will actually make it through court. Right? If the
Well,
United
that's the
States
thing.
government
Not if
is
Facebook does
censoring
it
people,
voluntarily. Not if so. Facebook
I
is
disagree.
cooperating. That's the problem.
I think that if the United States government is sitting there and telling them what to do, and they engage or comply with that, unless they have a record of non-compliance, ab-
And they
absolutely
do.
they are going to be there.
Well, I
Well, I
see.
mean,
That's
if
the
we
thing
look at
is
the
you have to
last
have
four
standing.
years, they have a pretty hefty record of noncompliance.
You're
So,
gonna see you're gonna see an issue with standing unless the people behind the posts are the ones that do it. And they've made the claim that like 12 people are responsible for some large percentage of the misinformation that they're quoting. Yeah,
Well, I
okay.
mean
So
that's
if you go on if you archive with archive.today or archive.is, that search does not have that little warning at the top. It's fascinating.
that
Let
is
me
indeed a
try
fascinating
arc.
thing.
Let me try archive.org. We'll see if that one does it. Oh my God, computer, stop being a pain in my ass. Yeah, I did put a period there.
Yeah, we've found ourselves in a very interesting time. As a matter of fact, things have been revealed now that we would have most certainly been banned for talking about in depth. I don't know, 2 weeks ago, right?
Easily.
So we're into some really uncharted territory, you could say. I mean, it's been written about, in certain works.
Hmm.
Orwell and Bradbury come to mind.
Yeah. Let's see. Who wrote A Brave New World?
Oh, Vonnegut as well. Yeah, good point.
Yeah.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, that's right. Thanks, Chuck Schumer. I actually had a comment on that, as a matter of fact. So Chuck
Oh
Schumer
boy.
has he's finally come out now that they're in such dire straits and people are learning just how villainous these monstrous demons are. That he's like, shit, we're gonna have to use the ace. So he came out and said, hey, we're gonna go ahead and try to push to get marijuana legalized federally.
Oh,
So
okay. So, yeah, totally go out there and numb your mind and fuck your brain up. That's definitely going to help things. It's not going to make shit start to turn into South Africa. I don't mean like a week ago. I mean like this past week. Oh
Uh,
man, that country is falling apart. It's collapsing into a racial civil war,
you know what? It's great
which is
because it's a precursor of what's going to happen here.
yeah, yeah, it really is. I
it's
mean, there are lessons to be taken from this. So let's hope that
I mean, you know what?
they are.
I think here's a couple things that could end up working out pretty well. One, BLM decided to endorse the Cuban regime that is shooting protesters. So that
that they
may
did.
that may slow the spread of the
Yeah, I do
contagion
want to.
just a
I
wee bit.
want to say thank you to the founders and leaders of modern day BLM for
Yes.
endorsing the
So
fascist Cuban regime.
so very much.
Modern day, you
Loving
say?
I love seeing that
Allow
that
me to help you with
organization
modern
has
day.
endorsed the regime a day after they opened fire using live rounds on
Yeah,
protesters.
it'd be one
Because
thing to
this
get in there
means,
before the line, but to go
yep,
ahead and wait till after the bodies have already cooled. I
right,
mean, that's
yeah,
that's bold. That's bold. I would
yep,
I would posit that it is in fact stunning and brave.
it is stunning and brave. So
So,
the upside to this is that may actually sit there and slow the progress of that organization considerably.
yeah, well, hold on a second. Let me just stop you there for a moment. If you look into staff chat, it didn't stop him in 2016 when Castro died, did it?
Oh no. Oh yeah. Let me read from the official Black Lives Matter Twitter, dated 11/26/2016. Rest in power. Hashtag Fidel
I
Castro.
I get that. I get that, right?
Mm-hmm.
But at the same time, there's a fundamental difference between theoretical communism, where it's a hero against some
Yeah,
sort of whatever,
Oh,
you
right?
know
you
they're
And
they
and
like?
you can
blaming
Well,
play
let me
you
pause
can
you for a
play
they
quick
blame
second
the
on that.
pretend
U.S.
Actually,
They
by
you
blame the
can play
U.S.
pretend that this individual who was a dictator isn't really responsible for
Yeah,
all of the
but
mass murder
here's
he's
here's
accused
what
of.
they actually had to
And
say on the
and there
matter,
is a
though.
fundamental difference between that and
You're not getting it. They literally use a quote from a cop killer that is a now an international fugitive, well, international terrorist, but a fugitive down in Cuba. They use Asada Shakur's quote as their chant, the breaking the chains thing. That's Asada Shakur, a member of a group,
the I understand.
a member of
So so
so the two last successful bombings of the Capitol building were done by people from the same group she was in.
all of that is fantastic, right? And
Yeah,
that's
what
a
I'm
great
saying is
thing,
that it's not
Craig.
going to matter
Hold
if
on,
this
hold
happens
on.
today. It'll smooth
You,
out.
you
It'll
just
roll
gotta
over.
you just gotta relax, right? Because when you turned around and you started that whole thing, I was like, "Who the fuck is this? I don't care." Right? And that's not because you don't have
Yeah,
a
what I'm
point.
saying
It's
is if it
just
didn't
that there
matter
is a
then, it's not going to
fundamental
matter now.
difference. There's a fundamental difference between citing some sort of terrible person who did terrible things and a quote that he used,
You mean
right?
like
And
Fidel
playing those
Castro?
playing those games and literally coming out in support of a regime a day
These
after the
people
news
literally
stories.
fucking bombed the Capitol building. Is what
I
I'm
understand. I understand, and it doesn't matter because whatever happened in the past happened in the past.
You mean
Right?
like the thing that just
Like,
happened in the past today?
no, no. There's a fundamental difference between yesterday and 20 years ago. 30 years ago,
Sure.
40 years ago, 50 years ago. So you start talking about these things that are historical symbolism. It's the same thing as those people who wear the fucking Che Guevara t-shirts. They
Yeah,
don't
but you
get
see,
taught. We don't talk about Che Guevara and how many people he killed. Now, when
Or
we
his
start
rampant
talking about
racism and
BLM,
homophobia.
Or the
BLM
United
waited
bitch,
until the
yeah,
bodies
okay.
were just barely lukewarm of their regime shooting protesters to come out and say they support the regime.
Yeah, and then what I'm saying is, if the same shit didn't matter back then, and it's the same exact people doing the same
But they
shit
aren't.
today,
They
it's
aren't.
not going to matter again.
They aren't sitting there and referencing the quote as it's coming out, hot off the presses. They're referencing the quote
I'm
after
pretty
a
fucking
significant.
sure they were. Well, BLM did not exist back when the building was bombed.
Yes, exactly.
But the
Now,
contemporary day BLM did exist.
it doesn't matter though,
What
right?
I'm saying is the same people are involved. The same shit's happening today.
You're extracting a quote from history that many people who are part of this movement never observed, right?
Right.
Or
They're
will,
going to use
for
it,
that
and they're
matter.
going to use it because they won't experience it. They don't know. They have no idea. They're just going to shout the thing, and there's going to be a handful of people who knows exactly what he did, blah, blah, blah. That's all fantastic. That is long dead history. It exists before these people came into the movement. It exists before these people living memory. In this case, they literally came out a day after the protesters were shot and said, "Yeah, that's a good thing. We're in support."
Yeah, you see, I'm saying that once again, it's in context in the past, the same exact kind of thing happened. They bombed the Capitol building, and then black supremacists came out and said, "Yeah, that totally was the best thing that should have happened."
But that
was
wasn't.
exactly what should
That
have
wasn't.
happened.
So that wasn't that something. Wasn't that what's that group? It wasn't BLM that did that. They used a quote,
right. It was the
but it wasn't that group.
It was the same. It was the contemporary.
It's
BLM.
a different group. It's a different group. They
It's
weren't calling themselves.
The same people from then are running the fucking show now.
But again, that's not how that works, right? Yes, there are similar people in both organizations. That's true. But nobody is sitting there and going to BLM and saying, "Okay, what's your historical past precedent, and let's make sure you're absolutely perfect." The left doesn't cancel the left.
Yeah, you're missing the part where it's the same exact people that were involved. It doesn't matter if there was like a thing.
The Weather Underground, I believe. Bruce.
That was one of the groups.
Underground.
Yeah.
That's one of the people that keeps coming up. Is one of the key figures in that. And that was one of the original bombings, as a matter of fact.
The people who support BLM are not familiar with those attacks, right?
Oh, and
yes,
they won't be.
There
will
is
intentionally not be familiar with them.
There is leadership that will be. Sure,
right.
That's true.
Which is why they said this.
But just because there is leadership that sits there and says this doesn't mean the horde of unwashed masses know any of that shit.
Look. All right. When I referenced this just now, I was talking about the Black Lives Matter official account posting on Instagram the 3 screen caps that are on the chat in our group right now.
Yeah.
So those have been all around Twitter, etc.
And as a matter of fact, just to clarify, because nobody's watching, because we're not there yet, the long and short of this is Black Lives Matter as an organization, the verified thing, they've basically to be very clear, they have endorsed the Cuban regime, and they have chided the leadership of America for its continued
they blame America
antagonism against Cuba.
And that's all fine.
And
right?
again,
they have framed it as the U.S. is punishing Cuba for some reason because they hate them or something. It's a human rights thing, is what they're saying. Never minding the blatant human rights violations of the Castro regime.
When you say that nobody's gonna know, like Asada Shakur, blah blah blah, like they name her in this
Yeah,
screed.
that
Like
still
it's
doesn't
one of the
mean
things that I'm
that
just
still
saying that
doesn't mean
like
that the people
the name
reading
is
this know
there
who
and
the
they
fuck
go
that
down
is.
it and then they talk about these people. And they also like right now they include South Africa because why the fuck wouldn't they?
I mean, they're going to sit there and they're going to throw spaghetti on the wall, right?
Oh,
And they
and
won't
as a
back
matter of
off these
fact, let me
statements,
pause this
but
whole
none
thing
of the
again.
people who support BLM know who that fucking person is except for the leadership.
Well,
It is a Marxist organization, and they are taking full advantage of the blessed idiot that march in step with leftist organizations.
and in lockstep, speaking of useful idiots,
Yes.
Sandy Cortez has come out and basically just echoed
Oh,
these
who the
exact
fuck
words.
cares?
I don't know who the fuck that is.
Alexandria Occasional Cortex.
Ah, okay.
She's basically just echoing these exact sentiments.
Yeah, she long outlived her shelf life a while ago, to the party, as it were.
It
And
is.
so right now, I think they're just waiting for her to fuck off until they have a cause to put her on again.
I think at the end of the day, I do think this might actually shoot them in the foot because it's one thing to sit there and reference historical atrocities, and use that as a rallying cry and print your Che Guevara T-shirts and all that other fucking bullshit. And it's another thing to come out a day after the newspaper headlines are, Cuban regime executes protesters, and sit there and say we support the Cuban regime.
My point is that it didn't matter the last time they did this, and this,
But
Assata
it
Shakur,
did.
and the look, hold on, Assata Shakur shooting a cop on the bridge,
And
or helping to shoot the cops on the
Weather
bridge, and then
Underground
the
did
Weather
not
Underground
have
bombing
popular
shit,
support.
the bombings
That
of the
didn't
Capitol
have
building, all
popular
that stuff.
support.
What I'm pointing out here is it didn't
Well,
matter
unless
if
you're talking about the
bombings
Obama
had
regime,
popular
but yeah.
It doesn't matter if the bombings had popular support. It matters if the groups that endorsed it had popular support, and they
They did
did.
not have anywhere near the level of popular support.
So again, the point here
Weather
at the end of
Underground is not at
is it
like
doesn't matter
57% approval or whatever the fuck it is.
At the end of the day here, it doesn't matter whether or not it has popular support. It matters whether or not they say this stuff and there's any kind of real world repercussion for it in terms of the organization, and there just isn't. There's not going to be. This one of the things that we have to deal with the First Amendment is that this kind of stupid shit can be said.
There is a
But it's also
fundamental
not going to
difference.
have. It's not going to have a financial impact
fundamental
on them.
difference between a niche group that has a niche following and something that has 51% approval nationwide, or whatever the fuck it is that they got.
I don't think BLM has that.
Actually, yeah, it's dropped. It's at about 40 something.
I'm pretty sure it's dropped.
And it goes down by the day at this point.
Where I need to try to find the most recent one.
They cratered their public support.
I know they cratered it, but I thought they were still at net 7% approval.
No, they have gone negative.
Have they gone negative?
Yes, thankfully.
Fucking where is I'm trying to find where
BLM support. Google, go.
I tried approval and it didn't give me anything.
Okay, let's see. National approval.
So this is by the way what we actually decided to trigger this whole conversation into. By the way, this is separate. I'm gonna go shunt back to where we started. One of the comments that I made was that I had a discussion where I was wrong on something. I quoted the wrong number is really what it came down to, right? Same number in the whole cloud of facts associated with the Texas incident. Some 80% of their power organization failed, and I was quoting the 80% as how much total wind power they had, and I was wrong in that, and I got called out in it. But one of the things that we were talking about just prior to this, it was the election stuff. And one of the comments that was made is that it's always stunning that in all of these left-wing issues, you can't fucking get reliable data on what the actual numbers are. And this is another perfect example of that. We're looking for Black Lives Matter net support. And you enter 3 Google searches, and there's no friggin' charts, bar graphs, or anything else.
I found one, but I don't know if I fucking trust it, because look at the fucking name. It's Civics spelled with a Q.
Oh,
yeah. Great. I've seen that too.
No, these do look like the right numbers, actually, based on what I've seen. Now, it's not overall... Yeah, this.
Here's the Forbes article that talks about it from I guess the anniversary of George Floyd getting necked.
Yeah, I saw that. Yeah,
So
I see
just
the
under
thing on
half hold
civics.
favorable views, down from 61% last May.
Yeah, I'll link the Forbes article for anybody that
And
wants to
it has
follow up
been,
on
they
this.
actually, oddly enough, they haven't really cratered their support that much. They're still, they're still higher than where they were prior to George Floyd getting killed. Post that,
According to
he was at
civics.com.
like 53, according to civics.com, yes. However, it would also, the interesting component is not necessarily what the support is, because that's actually been pretty consistent. It's holding between 42. It's
I
at
see the
45
neither
now. The
support nor
highest it ever
oppose
was
has
at was
definitely changed.
53. So they've lost about 8% of their overall, their highest peak support.
I think the funnier one was I thought I saw something where it was among Democrats and Republicans. I think or among by political demographic, it had a big swing somewhere.
Uh,
Maybe that's what I'm thinking of.
Yeah, it does. You can
uh,
actually highlight for that.
can
Oh,
I
you
highlight
can.
for that?
Oh,
Yeah,
hey,
and
yay,
then
can.
and then you can see that there's it just
There it is.
completely goes the other way. It's like you look at
No,
that
they've
and
they've
Oh,
actually still
independent's
they've been
interesting.
losing support. They just don't lose as much. They've lost
Well,
four
it's
percent of their
independent that was
initial support.
interesting. Check
Yeah, well,
independent.
it's the independents. So the independents started off at like 30%, neither here nor there, or something along those lines, and that's fallen from like 30% to 11%, and
No, no,
all
no,
of
no,
them
no,
have
no.
joined oppose.
Click on under party. Click independent.
Independent.
mhm,
Is that what's cratered?
that's very telling.
It's
Ah.
interesting. Opposition is now greater than support
Yeah, it's like
since Derek Chauvin convicted.
right after George Floyd was killed, there was a big
No,
bump in support.
it is right after Derek Chauvin is convicted is where the inflection point happened.
Yeah,
Yeah.
well, it's
That's
like,
amazing.
okay, well, hey, okay, we're fixed. We got it, right? We're
Now
good.
go down to
No,
race.
no, we're not.
Now go down to race and click on white for white independence. And all that really seemed to do is cement the greater opposition.
Yeah, 45% to 37%.
Then you click on, let's see. Well, if you look at black Democrats, I'm sure that's going to be interesting. 89% still support.
That's
Not a
actually
shocker.
less. I'm actually
Ooh.
kind of surprised that it's that
That's
low.
growing near to its initial levels of
Now,
support as of May last year. That's
black or African
2 years
American
ago, I should say, even.
Republicans.
That's something.
Hmm.
No, I mean amongst
Oh man,
what is this? Which is this? This is
Hispanic and
Democratic
other
Party.
Republicans. Oof. Well, Republicans in general just don't like them. Let's see. Hispanic or Latino independents oppose. Other independents oppose.
Yeah, I'll make sure and actually include a
So
link to this
so
because
in
This is
looking
actually
at
it's
it,
a
interesting.
fairly interesting chart.
they've
Let's see.
actually
What
they've
about?
actually lost 3% support amongst their key demographic. That's kind of
Let's see.
crazy.
Yeah, it's pretty rough what's happened with
Among let's see.
as what
White
is
male
those here.
independents, it's 53% opposition. White male Democrats, 82% support. 5% opposition. Oh, they haven't completed the hive mind yet.
No. Well, they only had 59 million to work with, and they've already lost a
I
portion
mean,
of that.
I
So
mean, all
it
in all,
makes things
all in
kind of
all, right?
difficult.
Like even if you just look at Black Democrats, it's only at 89% support.
Right.
Like their high was 93 or so, so they've lost 4% support from Black Democrats. That's kind of bad. That's like their key demographic.
Yeah,
Let's see.
that's
Let's
not
look
even their
at.
key demographic. That's their core demographic. That's
But here's the
who
thing
they're
now.
supposed to be
Click on
pandering to.
male and female are different
I
a
really,
bit.
really want to check my headset. I'm so cheap.
This again is entirely a problem of your own making.
I understand
Let's
it's a
see.
problem of my own making.
Postgraduate Democrat black females, 93% support.
You don't say.
Non-college student, 90% support. Watch this be like 10 total people and they're extrapolating.
It's entirely possible. I mean, there is a way to always get the answers you want from a survey.
Let's see.
Or a
Oh, hold on a
study.
second. 233,426 responses.
Okay, well that's a
Oh,
pretty fair
from
amount.
April 1, 2008 to July 14, 2021. So it's not as many as you think,
Hmm.
Mm.
divided over all that time.
Yeah, and it's
See, and I
entirely
feel like it's
possible
just the
they're not
young
getting the
ones.
same kind of candid responses that they would have been when things were less Civil War-y, shall we say.
Let's see, 65 plus
Oh, but
opposed, 50
speaking
to
of George
64.
Floyd and all that, I'm sure you guys heard about. Well, I don't know if I would say I'm a religious person, but I would say that if you are, you could take it as a sign not to engage in idol worship.
Ah,
Uh,
yes, that was pretty fantastic.
the
Oh
uh,
my God,
the
that was
lightning
great.
strike in Toledo, Ohio, on a basically a sunny day. It rains for 2-3 minutes, and it's sunny, and then all of a sudden lightning comes down and strikes the George Floyd mural, uh,
Boom.
right there where so many had previously bowed their heads in worship of the patron saint of fentanyl.
Yeah. Oh, by the way, I was looking at the just on a gender basis, and it is a stark difference between male and female for support for Black Lives Matter.
Oh,
Really?
oh
Like
yeah.
before Jacob Blake, so like not that long after George Floyd got, so in July, basically, men stopped supporting and started opposing. So July, mid-July, they crossed lines. Like there was majority opposition for males until um, May 11th. So actually, before George Floyd was killed, there was a crossing in the curves. I mean, it's there's error bands, but like the mean lines crossed in mid-July. Or no, sorry, mid-May. Then George Floyd died. There was a big bump in support and a big dip in opposition, and more people started to pick a side, basically. Like the end result of this is that it's kind of where it was, but it's more polar for males, and then for
Significantly so.
females, it's kind of where it was, but more polar again. But more females had like picked a side, so to speak. It was around 20% neither support nor oppose, and now it's around 11%. So they about half of the people remaining picked camp, and then for males, it went from like 27% unsure just after his death, all the way down to 12%. So lost a little over half of the uncertain people.
Hmm.
And they've got more to go. I mean, these are
I mean,
amateur
so this
numbers,
doesn't
as you
say
say.
like the I mean, then you can cool, you can click on the thing that says net support instead of the trend lines, and then it has then it has that little peak for men, and then for women, it's just all support.
Yeah, funny how that works out. But when
Well,
all you
but this doesn't have
consume
like
is,
normalization factors or anything that specified here. So
no, and I mean, when you look at a demographic that largely
yeah.
consumes modern mainstream media, it's going to be understandable that they're going to be parroting the lines, fed to
Let's
them.
see. So if I pick, all right. So not Democrats. Look at, let's see, postgraduates, more college graduates, a little less. Non. Okay, so if you didn't go to college or you're a postgrad, you're more likely to support. So we go with postgraduate, and then female, and then Democrat, and then black,
So you said
and
what,
that's that.
93%?
This
I'm
says
very
91.
surprised. I'm very
So
surprised, right?
basically
Like,
everyone except Candace Owens,
Oh,
right?
and 18 to 34, and then it's 93%.
So everyone
Although
short of
if I hit
Candace Owens, basically.
Yeah. Her demographic, but just not her.
Right?
Hmm.
Yeah, her and like
Well,
two other people.
it's still very surprising how difficult it is to find friggin' data on this shit. Which
Well,
anybody wanna
it
anybody
really
wanna talk
isn't.
about the election stuff? Anybody at all? We kind
Well,
of left off on that. I think one of the last times we got together.
oh yeah, I mean we've got all night, man. So yeah, we I was
Well,
figuring we'd get into that because it's a really kind of enormous topic.
yeah,
Yeah, but like at the
some of
same
us have all
time,
night.
well,
And
like
there's more
so,
coming too.
we started earlier
Well,
with this exact same kind of conclusion here. Like, where the fuck is the data? Just give us a final report
right.
already. Enough of this cock pulling in public.
Well, the issue is from what I've seen, what we talked about on this show back in November when all this shit was hitting, right? Like we didn't endorse all of the crazy shit that was being presented as proof
Of
that Trump
course
won,
not. Like,
because 90% of that was straight bullshit. But there was
there's still
certain,
people who think he's going to get reinstated in August, and I don't know what fucking way they're thinking it can happen. And if it does happen, I don't know, I'll fucking have to eat a hat or something. But at the same time, like, that is bonkers.
I'm thinking two Craigs, one cup is coming down the line. That's your future, Craig,
Don't
if he
subscribe
wins.
for that because it won't be hosted here.
But I mean, like, there's a lot of crazy shit that has been advertised all across the way. There was the crackening and all the other nonsense.
God.
Realistically, at least where I'm here. I'll pick my 5 states to start with. Right? I found that there were 5 states that were suspicious, right? And that was
Sure.
Pennsylvania, Michigan, Wisconsin, Georgia, and what was the fifth one? I think Nevada
Arizona?
was a little bit suspicious. No, actually, I didn't see anything. Everything that people tried to claim in Arizona got like
We're talking about
debunked
at the
right
time,
away.
though, right?
At the time, this is at the time.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it
Fair
was
enough.
Nevada. And that was because like Nevada had like 12,000 more people here that were voting than were supposed to and stuff like that. So it was Nevada, Georgia, Pennsylvania, Michigan, and Wisconsin. And those 5 states I found to be suspicious. That didn't mean that I think that Trump won all 5 states. It just meant that they had fucking hanky panky going on that was very evident from the data that we had available to us. I still
Right.
stand by that.
And it was pretty clear at the time there were things that were going on. There was weird issues, but at the same, that wasn't causative or actionable or any of that kind of
No,
nonsense.
no, it's
And we
just that
we just
like,
basically said at the same. And I remember this. We said at the time we need more data. We need to wait and see what happens. We need people to audit shit. We need to look at it.
what
That
what
said, we
we
are
said
starting to
what
get
we
that
said
data.
was something along the lines of when you do these kinds of analyses, right? There's a difference between indicators and actual problems, right? And we saw a lot of indicators, numbers that didn't add up. That doesn't mean they can't add up in the final tallies, right? But there was a whole bunch of fucking, it was a shitstorm, right? Like it was a shitstorm of numbers being thrown around. Stuff didn't add up entirely. There's a whole variety of different instrumentation. There was no confidence in the election process, and it looked like there was a whole bunch of people who were actively attempting to obfuscate it, which we found out was technically true. Now nothing has changed.
Oh,
But
yeah,
you
absolutely.
have you have Tucker Carlson coming out, what was it, last night, and he presented essentially the exact same shit that we talked about in regards to Georgia as our concerns at the time that the Georgia stuff happened. But what's really weird is if you watch the Tucker monologue, Tucker is citing numbers that are very, very different than what you'll find in like USA Today. So USA Today is saying that it was only 200 ballots that were duplicated. Tucker's claiming that it was close to 4,000. And I don't know how we get these kinds of discrepancies between conservative and liberal media.
Well, when you cook the numbers just so, you get kind of good at it.
Well,
Well,
but
I think
that's
that there's a difference between some people, um, so they have looked at absentee. So if he's talking about Georgia, then they're talking about absentee ballots in Fulton County, or just the ballots in Fulton County, and I still can't quite figure out which ones they're really going for. But the only data that I've seen available is just the raw images for the absentee ballots in Fulton County.
That
And Fulton
seems to
County,
be
for those who don't know, is basically just Atlanta.
Yeah.
that does seem to be the case. The weird part to me is that you're sitting there and you're seeing stuff like USA Today reporting that it's 200 and Carlson reporting that it's like 4,000. He specifically said it was something along the lines of, in terms of ballots that we know that have double counted, it's 3,300 some odd for Biden and 856 for Trump. And I'm not opposed to that, because that tends to be the ratio with which flubs happen in Democrats' favor. It's usually like an 80 to 90 to 1, or a 4 to 5 to 1. Yeah, one time you'll find that things screwed up in Republicans' favor, and 4 times you'll find that things screwed up in the Democrats' favor. It's just really weird to see these major discrepancies in the numbers, and this always happens when it comes to liberal stuff, which makes at least me extremely skeptical of the liberal narrative, because if they could produce concrete, solid numbers on a regular basis, it wouldn't be so bad.
Now, it's interesting because Tucker did say that a progressive organization agreed that there were these discrepancies, at least in the number of hundreds. Like, I think like 800 something was cited, which, is distinctly less than 4 whatever thousand. But like that means like at least they're agreeing, yes, or admitting something happened. So that's a step forward.
Well, he cited the Atlantic Journal, right? And I read the Atlantic Journal article, and they were I don't remember seeing any real numbers in that article.
See, that might have also been him basically picking do a little bit of cherry picking of his own.
And that's kind of what I'm thinking ended up happening. Like, I'm sure he has a basis to point to, but when you start talking about, like, why is it that the left and the right aren't able to have a coherent conversation, and this was what I was talking about earlier, where, I made a mistake in my my statement to people in terms of how much wind power Texas had, but the overall conclusion was that wind power failed, right? And I stand by that, although I've had
you're
people
a conspiracy
argue.
theorist, sir.
Yeah, and they told me I was a conspiracy theorist for that, and I was like, what the fuck are you talking about? Meanwhile, the other kid's sitting there and saying that the whole reason Texas has its own independent grid was a scheme cooked up by Republicans despite Democrats, and planned for secession from the United States. That was what I was the conspiracy theorist, because I said that 80% of their power is generated from wind when it's only 20%. And 80% of it failed.
How dare you, sir?
He's not. Yeah.
How absolutely dare you?
But it's very strange to me that every single time I try to go into a liberal cause and I try to pull numbers from it, you can't find them. The fucking numbers disappear.
Well, you know that most of their causes are run on feelings, so.
Well, and that
but you
may
have to
be
trust
the case.
The science, unless it makes you feel bad, in which case it's no longer science.
Think about something like wind power. If you've ever tried to do a deep dive into wind power, you want to try to find, like, how long do these turbines actually last?
About 5 years.
Yeah, that's a good question.
So I've looked into it, and the estimates that I've seen tend to be around 12 to 15 years. But you know what the wind industry says it is? No, they're supposed to last 25 per the wind industry.
Oh.
They only last 12 to 15. Yeah.
Well, so it's funny because what you'll find, I'm sure, is the numbers that were given back in the 80s to make everyone believe it, which was a 25-year service life.
Yep.
I remember hearing about that all throughout the fucking 90s. But I also remember in the late 90s
what
they
your
found out about wind.
cost calculations are based off of is a 25-year service life.
Yeah, but I also remember that in the late 90s they started to find out about wind in the wind power industry. And that it can do things like abrade the ever-loving shit out of your epoxy panels, and you no longer have a wind turbine blade. So, and it turns out that the reason why it's such a good industry to be in, as far as employment and getting stuff done and farms still going up, even though they're not cost-effective, is because we're all paying for them.
Yep.
They are a net negative waste of money, because they can't last the service life they promised.
Right. But here's the crazy part.
The blades last about 5 years. They have a 5-year inspection term, and they inevitably, every time they get inspected on the 5-year term, get replaced. and it takes all that extra manpower, etc., which is really expensive, that high up in the air with that much weight involved.
Yep. And then after about 12 to 15 years, the bearings in the actual
Yep.
turbine break down. And
Why?
that's what
Because
that
shit gets stuck in there from the wind.
Well, it's not just that. I mean, you sit there, there's no way. You're not talking about something that's load balanced, right? Like it's a
So
giant.
they try that with they try doing load balance with weighting,
Yep.
and it doesn't work because you end up with these vibrational modes which snap them in
Right.
half.
Right. So this is the difficult part. I would challenge Craig to sit there and cite the evidence on the blades. I believe he's correct, but you can't find it. You can't find it anywhere.
Well, it's funny. What you
In
do
fact, the
is
wind
there's
industry
a
will still tell you that they have a 25-year service life.
oh, I'm certain.
As
So
they do.
it's funny. There's that documentary by remember I think you must remember this documentary about wind and solar, about renewables, by a pair of renewable advocates.
Yep.
Yeah. So in that they talk about the service life of those blades.
They I'm trying
So
to
if you can
remember what
find
that
their
was.
citation, that would give you a lead in.
I'm trying to remember what that was called. It was like two environmentalists that
Yeah.
were, or like an environmentalist filmmaker who decided to actually go explore renewables, and he found just absolute, like basically everywhere they built them, they'd build them and it would turn everything into a fucking wasteland. They'd cut everything off at the stem and then just abandon everything in place.
He found economic carnage, and he was wondering
Yeah.
what happened. And that
Economic
it
and
wasn't.
environmental carnage.
Yeah, I was gonna say, and then he also found out that all the birds were dying in the area.
Yep.
Little
Yeah.
details
Fucking
like
great.
that made him as an environmentalist a little bit miffed.
Well, it wasn't just that. You take what was he did the solar panels in the desert there and
Oh God,
the Ivanpah, and that was like they destroyed a ton of tortoise habitat in
yeah,
order to try to build fucking Ivanpah. And that just like basically you can actually watch videos of that where birds fly into the path of the reflective mirrors and just burst into
Oh,
flames.
Ah,
yeah.
jeez, wow, that's a
Well,
little dark.
that one's so. Just to be clear, that one's
It's
a
scary.
solar thermal. That one is a solar thermal generator.
Oh, those are the ones that actually focus the light
if
onto
I'm
one
remembering
point, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So that is designed to focus high amounts of heat into one area in the center, and yeah, that cooked everything that flew above it.
Yep.
Yeah, that.
Yep.
And the
That
problem
certainly
is,
will.
it doesn't properly absorb in the middle. It does reflect back out and upward,
Yes.
and also not all of the alignment is perfect, so some of it just misses.
Yep.
So that whole airspace above that thing is lethal.
Yep.
And the closer you get to the middle of it and closer to the mid plane where it's supposed to be hitting. If you get anywhere near there, like you're going to cook, and it's gonna be like the full fucking intensity of the sun, but times a football field on your little area.
Yep.
Yeah.
And that's
Like,
the
think a
that's the
giant
crazy
ass
part.
Fresnel lens on you.
But every single time I have to go dig into liberal stuff because I try my best
Yeah.
to give them the benefit of the doubt and
Oh, of
think
course.
that they have some sort of basis to whatever ridiculous nonsense I'm being told.
On rare occasion, you're gonna find a chestnut where they definitely have a point to be made.
They absolutely do, and this is the thing is, and
Yeah.
I watched. I think it was Vosh on Timmy Pool there, and the thing that irks
Okay, so
me
you weren't
with
just
the
watching
left,
the pedo for like no reason.
which pedo? Who's a pedo in this scenario?
Oh well,
I
the
mean-
one who's admitted it in public,
Yeah.
I don't know who that is.
Seriously?
Vosh.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, really?
Yeah. No, he's
Did not know that.
he's very keen on Kit. Well, let us be entirely accurate. He thinks that anything related to their pornography
the
should be
communist-
legalized.
In the communist utopia, the age of consent won't matter, according to Vosh.
And also, according to some behind-the-scenes talk, he may have just tacitly endorsed it, but that can't be confirmed. So who knows?
I mean, I can't verify it was him. He was wearing a blue shirt. But in any case, what you end up seeing is you do watch these people, and I've encountered this whenever you try to debate a debate a liberal. The liberals will flit from like topic to topic to topic to topic, and they won't stay in any one area if you demonstrate that you have any sort of coherent argument to refute their point.
Oh yes, absolutely.
So
I've had this experience numerous times. It's
it,
like,
it's
oh, we're
really
moving
fucking
on,
annoying because
so
you
so we're moving on to the new topic now. Okay, I
yeah
just want to be clear. Are we
they're
done
like,
with that, or are we? Okay, so we are
right.
done with that. Okay, great.
Yeah, and then
Oh,
they jump to the next one with no warning, and it's usually some sort of other semi-related factoid, but they just don't know any of the context surrounding it. And it's not that like I don't think that these people when they do this are doing it because they're evil or wrong or they're trying to deceive you. I think that they legitimately only know that fact and they know nothing else around it. No supporting evidence.
I don't know. I might have to take small issue with that, in that I think they are evil. But anyway, continue.
Really?
I think so.
Uh, I've always just taken it as they only have a limited attention span, and so they only learn about the portion and concern associated with a factoid. They don't learn the rest of how you got the factoid. It's kind of like the although I guess I would agree with you when it comes to the people who are advocating for solar or wind and argue that solar and wind is the cheapest form of energy. Like you start challenging them on that and they're like, "Well, yeah, of course you need
yeah.
something when the sun goes down." And you're like,
Well, if someone can just
"So
out and out say there's no way that nuclear is viable, and then
well,
try and
see,
come
they
up with
just
this
ignore
as an
nuclear."
option.
No, the problem is they could try to say that and then they would fail.
Well,
Right.
and what's happened is actually has come out what some of these people have said behind closed doors. They hate nuclear because it doesn't
It
make
works.
people have to change their ways. It doesn't take power away
Exactly.
Right.
from the
Yep.
little people.
It's because it's fucking viable.
Yep.
It's
Well,
viable.
and
It works. It doesn't
My
destroy the
favorite part,
world. You don't have to,
yeah,
go full eco-terrorist to make it work. You can
my
actually
my
just
favorite
make it
part
work.
about them, my
yep.
favorite part about environmentalists, like the actual, like not the enviro Nazis who don't care about the environment, but the ones who are actually like the true believers. It's when they spend the time for whatever reason they accidentally stumble upon real information
Oh,
and they just their entire worldview shifts overnight and they are thoroughly disgusted with their past behavior on nuclear.
see, I wish that happened more often, but
It
from what
doesn't
I've
happen often
seen,
enough, yeah.
from what I've seen, the way, and this is psychological dissonance for those who are listening. This is what ends up happening. You end up with two real possibilities. You go read psych papers, and they'll say there's four potential outcomes, but it's really one of two possibilities. One is you accept the new information and you incorporate it into your worldview view, or the other is you deny the new information and you have to deal with living in denial, right? You just pretend it doesn't
And you're
exist.
just upset.
And
And then
do
there's
not
these
do
two other
this.
things
It
that
is
are kind of
incredibly
like
anti-science, and it is bad, bad, bad for your
it is.
brain.
It
Like,
is. It
it
is
is
very
like
bad for your brain.
legitimately bad for your
Now,
brain. Like,
Yeah,
will give you brain disease later in life doing this shit. Don't do it.
yeah, you might accidentally vote for Democrat or something later on.
Yeah, I
now the
mean, there's
the
already 59 million of you. You guys are going to be declining. We don't need you. Like, I support human biodiversity. This self-selection for defeat and, ending your own life. I don't know if it's the way to go, guys. I really don't. Really don't.
there's technically two other ways, and they're both some form of rationalization. So it's rationalization towards denial or rationalization towards acceptance. But at the end of the
Those are
day,
just stages towards either end.
not necessarily, right? So I will say that I have rationalization
And you could be
of
stuck in a loop.
acceptance for when we start talking about like race and IQ, right? So
Mhm.
rationalizing that data, I handle that by saying that, when we start talking about human beings being equal, it's not a literal textual equality, it's a metaphysical form of equality between all of mankind, right?
Well,
And
I
that
mean,
is a
it's not like you'd
that is
say that a dachshund
absolutely a
and a Great Dane are exactly the same. They're certainly both dogs, but I mean, they're obviously different breeds.
well, and
If
that's
everybody was equal, then we wouldn't do anything.
Yeah, the
True,
world would be
but
incredibly
that's
boring.
that's also still a rationalization, right? Like if we turned around and said, hey, there's the technical truth is that there's some sort of scale by which we can rank people in
Well,
one
the
specific
equality comes
characteristic.
from the way we treat everybody, not from the way that everybody is.
Right, but those are all forms of rationalization.
No, that's just the way the law's set up.
Well, that's a separate issue.
It's literally the way. It's literally the intent of it is you treat everybody equally.
Right.
Everybody gets a shot. What you do
But
with it is what you do with it.
Some
That's
people
how the
can't
law
take
is
it.
written and
I
how it
would
should
still
be taken.
say I would still say the hardcore acceptance of that bit of information would be a ranking system. Whereas I prefer the outcome where I deal with a
Really?
metaphysical concept instead of
Well, you see,
the
the thing
harsh
is, it
reality.
wouldn't. That belies several different worldviews that could be approached there. Either it would be by racial ranking, which would not accept the premise of the idea that
And
IQ
that's
matters in the
yes.
first place, or it'd be literally by IQ, in which case the race doesn't make a difference again.
Well, I mean, it would kind of favor
I
Asians.
mean, it's kind of yeah, kind of if you care about the race,
No,
but at
I,
that
I'm
point you're just
not. I'm
talking
not
about IQ.
talking. I'm not talking about the race thing. I'm saying that if we turn around and we start, let's say we had an IQ ranking, right?
That's why I
You
was
could
using that
say
as an example.
you could say that people are better or worse based on that characteristic, and sitting there
Yeah,
and ignoring that's a trait and all the other stuff associated with it. That is still kind of a rationalization of that thing, and I
or
think that's a
or
healthier
like
approach. So it's the point is
or
not.
just not caring.
Well, the point that I'm getting at is it's not always unhealthy to not accept all of the consequences of
Well,
some theory or idea.
feelings require you to feel something about something. If you don't care, then
I
you don't need to
suppose.
rational. You don't need to rationalize at that point.
I suppose. I would just still see it as a
I mean, call that a
rationalization.
fifth outcome if you want. I guess
Well, it's one of the two other fourth
it's
outcomes.
it's not really rationalizing in either direction. It's not giving a shit.
Hmm.
Hmm. Indeed.
But in any case, it's not always true. But I do wish that
Yeah.
people, when they went into cognitive dissonance, would actually have a change in their worldview. It would really benefit nuclear a lot.
Well, it does happen.
Yeah.
It is unfortunately uncommon, and that is
Yes,
to the detriment of us all. And a lot of
it
that too
is.
can really be laid at the hands of the radicalization and division in people, because a lot of people on that end of things, they've come to think so badly of us, shall we say, that they expect that there is no forgiveness in us. And to be fair, they don't deserve it. But
What
you
you
know,
mean by us there, Redman?
maybe you could get off my land, sir. Maybe. Have you considered it?
Maybe you can stop using my money, bitch.
Hey, stop
Now
spinning
that
our
we've gone down that
casinos.
road.
Maybe we'll do that. Okay. Stop dropping it
All I'm
off. What can I say?
Use
all
your
I'm
wampum and
saying
leave my shekels alone.
all I'm saying is that I am opposed to cultural appropriation, and all you motherfuckers need to stop using my electricity.
Excuse me. That's lightning sent from the sky gods that you're trying to capture. So you need to watch your privilege,
Yeah.
sir.
Yeah,
Look,
but I
sir,
did capture
I
it,
saw
so it's
him do
my
the dance
culture.
for it yesterday, all right?
I suspect I did see that you did see him dancing.
Uh-huh.
Speaking of dances, and fun excursions into the IH conundrum that is where I work, right?
Do
Uh-huh.
tell.
So we have a large asbestos project that we
This
have
is
to do.
not the kind of dance you promised, sir.
It will get there. Trust me. So a large asbestos project. Asbestos, if anybody ever wants to dig into it, is like the gold standard for hazard mitigation. It's tremendously annoying, and exactly why regulations kind of fail to get work done. Um, but one of the things that has come up is I've been super pissed off because we've developed our project design and it's all this like nitpicking with our compliance organizations. So I turned around and I had my asbestos project designer qual last week, and now they're sending me to asbestos inspector. So I'm going to be requalled as asbestos everything. I'll be a little mini asbestos god once again. So we had another asbestos project designer in our group working on something, The one thing I learned in asbestos project design class last week is OSHA has a specific requirement for your DCU, and that is that you are buck fucking naked
All
when you
right.
go into that shower, right? You are to remove all of your street clothes. You are to
Yep.
get into your your contamination suit. You are to proceed through the DCU, and then on your way out, you are to doff your anti-contamination suit.
You
You are
are
to
to strip
shower.
down again. Yep.
You are to strip down before you go shower. Then you go shower, and then you can go into the next room and put on your civilian clothes. And when you read the regs, it is very, very clear that there is no option for modesty clothing. It's either street clothing
Yep.
or the other stuff. So you have to be buck fucking naked per OSHA. What I didn't catch was what my fellow project designer did. Is
boy.
my joke was that we should just make sure the individual who happens to be causing me massive amounts of headaches ensures compliance with that directive. That he should physically, we should put somewhere in the procedure that he has to physically observe and make sure that
Put
the
poles
OSHA
in the
compliance.
shower.
Right. So what turns out, and I suspect that some OSHA motherfucker is having quite the chuckle, because it literally says in the OSHA regulation that the employer shall ensure that employees comply with the getting buck naked and going back in. And I cannot for the life of me conceive of a way that an employer can ensure employees are complying with their naked duties than to physically have an oversight individual observe them get naked and come out showered
That is
buck
some
naked.
top level fuckery.
I think that the way that would happen is with a window at eye level and enough distance between the two individuals across a wide enough wall that you can't see anything really.
Yeah,
But
but that's not
you see the clothes they go in with, and then you see the clothes
that'd
that
be
are
great
left
if I was
behind.
abating asbestos in a giant empty warehouse. It's not so
Right.
great if I have to, abate asbestos in the middle of a fucking
Well,
tunnel.
I think that like knowing the clothes that they brought they were wearing on the way in, and then seeing like having the clothes on the one side after they've gone into the shower, seeing unless they wore double of everything, being able to see the
Or
undergarments
or
and then
they
the
just turned
overgarments.
around. What if they wore a swimsuit and then they wore it underneath their clothes? See, that's the thing. You can't prove it unless you physically watch them doff and you physically watch them come out showered. I see no way around that. And I'm thinking this is going to be a fun asbestos project.
Yeah.
Because I'm not the oversight organization. I'm just, the engineering
You're just
department.
ensuring compliance.
No, I don't ensure compliance. I write compliance. The compliance
Okay.
organization ensures compliance.
So I guess the
And
question we need to ask ourselves here is, what brand cock ring will you be wearing?
I don't. Oh, I'm not going in.
Oh, you're
Fuck
not?
that.
Okay, well then what
No,
brand will you
no.
be recommending for the ones that'll be doing the cleaning?
I don't know, but I am anticipating. I know the crew that's going to be going in there, and there's somebody who's going to be a rather chubby little dwarf, and I
Oh.
just imagine this to be the most spectacular naked man experience that our oversight organization could possibly enjoy. I am hoping against hope that we can ensure that those employees did comply with OSHA Compliance Directive J of 1926-1101.
Huh. I can only imagine the stories you're going to have for us soon.
I went to my manager and I said, it says, thou shalt ensure that employees comply with the following. So, he's like, oh, you can't do that. I'm like, yeah, I just have to write a rule or I just have to write into the procedure. IH organization shall ensure compliance with OSHA directive, blah, blah, blah. I don't have to tell them what it is, and as long as they don't read it, we win.
Well, Godspeed, sir.
Yeah.
That'll be something.
I'm sure that's not how it's going to play out, but one can dream.
Yeah. Yeah, you certainly can. Oh man. You've got to be a lot of fun to work with.
I can be. You're either on my good side or my bad side. If you're on my good side, I make the doors of the world open for you, and everything happens very quickly. If you're on my bad side, it turns out I tend to know the rules better than you, and I will make you comply with every single one of them. Every single one of them.
Yeah, I guess if you know what all's in the book, you can really make life difficult.
You can.
So, since we've
Or
taken a
easy.
bit to kind of get back into things here, quite a lot has happened. We've gone over some of the most recent fuckery, Cuba, South. We haven't really gotten into South Africa, so the long and short is Ramaphosa was jailed, and that was used as a pretext to burn down the country. We'll see how that plays out as we have more
Well,
data on it.
So most importantly, out of that is the KZN Food Distribution Center, which supplies the food for the whole area. Like it's the nexus for the area. Was ransacked. Like you're gonna see, like
Starvation's
I don't know
coming quickly.
if you don't remember what happened the last two countries that decided to kill off their white farmers. Um, yeah, it's basically starvation is coming. Like in the white and the Indian farmers that are down there are being racially persecuted right now. Um, and their farms are probably going to get stolen, etc. We'll see what happens. It'll be interesting to watch.
Well, what's gonna be quite interesting, I think, is we're facing. I don't know if any of you guys tune into the fourth turning stuff. My wife I tried to read it. It's very boring. But it does kind of look like we're headed on multiple fronts towards societal collapse. In multiple nations, kind of around the world, right? Like China is overextended. They're not self-sufficient, right?
Well, they might. My guess is that if South Africa continues to go the way of Zimbabwe, um, what might happen is China might just kind of offer to help and then turn them into a feudal colony and use them as their breadbasket. I mean, they're still heavy on expansionism right now as much as they can. They might Belt and Road them.
Yeah, they really
I mean,
are. They really are going all out on that, even still.
I know that they are doing that, but that's the problem that you have, right? Is if you kick off, the next World War, which
Right.
they probably will, right? All the United States military or the world's military has to do against China is a blockade. And as much as China wants its expansionism, which it does, it's pretty easy to choke trade to the entirety of China.
They have that gigantic ass Russia border.
Yeah,
they
that is kind of a thing, and Russia is still fairly
they
friendly.
don't have the infrastructure there to move stuff through.
And they've got Pakistan.
I guess so.
And they've got Nepal.
I don't know if
Even
they
though
have. I don't know if they have the production that they need coming out of those countries in order to supply
they
them.
don't. They don't. But they also have them as buffers against border blockade. If you're gonna blockade China and you basically tell Russia, hey, you can't trade with them, Russia's A, gonna laugh, but B, even if they say that they're gonna comply with a blockade, there's no fucking way they're gonna comply with a blockade. Tons of stuff's gonna go through Russia right into China.
Oh yeah, even if
But
facially they do go with it, they're still going to be funneling stuff to them because it's Russia. I mean, they don't care. And it's Russia and Joe Biden. So I mean, what the fuck does Vladimir care about him?
I get that, right? I get what you guys are saying, but I would definitely say that while you can't necessarily maintain a pure blockade,
Oh, it would hurt.
you still have a logistical nightmare of moving
yeah,
that
no,
much
you
material.
couldn't make it hurt. That's true. That's very reasonable. But
Right,
you
like-
couldn't give them a real blockade is just not a feasible option at
you
this
start
time,
you
sadly.
start talking about the recent study that's like, oh yeah, the secession talk is on the rise again. and these blue cities think that they can fucking secede from the red states, or that they
Oh my
the red
God,
states
yeah.
require them. I mean, all it's literally going to require is us to be like, yep, sorry, we're not delivering
That's
food
so
to New
much
York
smaller
City.
in scale. But I
Yeah,
mean,
but
same principle. Same, absolutely same principle.
it's the same principle, right? Like, if all of a sudden New York City turned around and decided to give a finger to the rest of New York State and the rest of the country, all we just do is choke a couple bridges and 8 million people will die within 6 weeks. I mean, well, actually, they'll probably survive, but they'll be out of soy
Well,
lattes,
about a
so it'll
quarter of
be
them will
like
survive.
death.
About a quarter will survive. The other ones will all be, stripped down for their meat.
Right. Like, it won't take very long to collapse the city if they decided to do some funky shenanigans. It really won't. Like, it would take a lot. They can turn around and think that they're funding red areas, and that's, like, we've talked a little bit about how that's not true. But they are supplied entirely by red areas, and they only exist but for the red areas that want to sell them food.
Yeah, these big cities. I mean, they if they didn't get the subsidies that they did from the hardworking people elsewhere, things would be very, very different. Like San Francisco, for instance, without all the money that's coming in from elsewhere, would be quite well. It would look even shittier than it does now.
Which is an accomplishment for San Francisco.
Yeah, I know, right? Oh, speaking of
Oh,
shitty, this actually came
no.
out just a few days back. You guys remember the whole uh, anarchist guy and his militia that were going to go and do a citizen's arrest on Governor Whitmer and hold a
Oh yeah,
trial
it
and all
was.
that.
So which one wasn't a fucking Fed?
Yeah, there were 15 guys in that group, right? Was it 15?
Yep.
Okay.
I think 13 of them were FBI agents.
12.
12 of them. Okay.
12. So it would appear that there were 12 of those
Three.
individuals were involved in that federal plot. I'll make sure and have a link to that for everybody. But
That only means three of them were actually like. That's so stupid.
yeah, I mean, Fed boys go to Fed boy, right? I mean, that's what they do.
How the fuck does it take 15 like that? Like at least like with that kind of shit, you've at least got to have the right ratio. Like have an informant in there or something, and then come in with the cavalry when shit's gonna go down. You don't
Well,
have like
it's
everybody but one or two guys be a fucking Fed.
well, what's really interesting with that whole entire development there, right, is this seems to be the case in a lot of different things where the Fed is the FBI is
Oh yeah,
legitimately orchestrating these
they're the
fucking
ones that are
things.
encouraging everything. Yeah, it's fucking like this was a problem under Bush with Muslims, under fucking Obama with Muslims, and now it's
Yep.
I mean, it's the same exact fucking story. There were people who were legitimately terrorists that have been taken down, but then there's the loud handful of cases, like not even handful, like there's the loud set of cases where it's definitely like the U.S. government that instigated shit.
Yep.
Or at least
Well,
like
and
there's some where
that's
it's a
the
gray
weird
area,
part.
and there's some where it's like definitely them.
I mean, if you get to the point where 2/3 or what is it, 4/5 of your frigging group is feds, maybe that's isn't it a sting operation? One of those things is illegal, right? Where they basically
Oh,
try to force.
entrapment
Yeah,
is
wouldn't you think that if you had 80% of the people involved in something like this, that's entrapment? Because if those 80% weren't there, it probably wouldn't have happened.
all right. So let's like tone that down a little bit and just look at 1/3 of the people involved. Sure, if we look at like 5 people and one of them is not a Fed, maybe you can make the argument that there somehow needs to be 4 other individuals involved. We're talking about 12 people in a group of people that were doing stuff together. 12
Yes.
out of 15. You can't justify that shit. I don't see the justification there. Like, was one of them pretending to be a gas station attendant when they showed up with a truck, or what?
Yeah, I mean those numbers are pretty overwhelming.
It's possible there's some justification I'm missing here, but like, what the fuck?
Well, I mean, this reminds me of a story that I remember from the Chans about somebody who had talked to their grandfather, or not their grandfather, but their dad was like a sheriff, and they went to set up some deal and got set up in some local militia. And then as things got weirder and weirder, guys kept leaving and leaving. And then they finally go to do the bust, and it ends up being that it's like you have there weren't even any civilians left. It was all sheriffs, feds, and like DEA. And so the whole thing just got covered up. It's one of those web of firma things that we can't really verify because, of course, they're going to cover that shit up. But but I mean, yeah, it probably happened, and this almost reeks of that exact same thing.
Well, it's kind of like, oh, another thing we can cover. Was it the Freedom phone or the Liberty phone? I think it's the Freedom phone. Um, so it was promoted on, it was, trended on Twitter. Some guy who claims to be like the youngest Bitcoin millionaire or whatever, decided he was going to make a phone that was free of all the censorship, blah, 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 blah. The website didn't have like any info. Like there's no specs on the fucking phone.
Yep.
What happened? It screams to me either a phone I wouldn't want to have in the first place, because what phone am I going to get for $500 with no specs?
Right.
But also it screams to me that it could easily be just a step up from that app that was used to get so many of those drug traffickers not that long ago. So if you remember
absolutely.
that was that huge success for the FBI and Interpol and so on, using that app to catch all those drug traffickers because they thought they were secure. This is claiming a lot of their same kind of shit, and it, like the app that's supposed to monitor this kind of stuff inside the phone is called Trust.
Okay. That's not
I
sketchy.
just yeah, I just look at this thing thinking, what kind of like 12-year-old came up with this shit?
Yeah.
I mean, and the guy has a
I
full beard, so unless he's got some serious progeria, he's not 12.
Well, physically at least. A lot of these people never do grow up.
Well,
Yeah.
it's always very strange because you start seeing this stuff and it does seem to be it looks surprisingly fake, right? It's kind of like that we
Well, it's got like
getting
its own app store, and
yeah.
which I'm guessing is just a rip of Aptoid. It runs on DuckDuckGo instead of Google for the search bar.
I
I
should
guess
probably
is that
I keep
I
hearing
bet
people
it's
say DuckDuckGo is like the way to go.
it's good.
Honestly,
Is it?
I use that and Bing as well as Start Page because I like having access to Google results. I just don't necessarily like Google knowing what I'm searching with. So if you
Mm,
want that, startpage.com is great. It never it never builds up a profile on you because every search is done through a randomized VPN essentially. I mean, I'm really
So
simplifying, but
another thing I thought of on this is Huawei basically got embargoed by the U.S.
indeed they did.
and
They've
as a
had to come
part
up
of
with
the
their own OS.
well, that's the thing I was going to get to there. Basically,
and that was a shame.
they basically took the existing Android OS and they slapped Huawei on it instead of Google. And if you look into if you go in, the funny thing was there are a lot of places inside the initial distribution where it still said Google. Like it's very clear all that like because Android is in large part just open source,
Yep.
so it's not like it's terribly hard to go in there and just slap a new sticker on top of it. And so my guess is that that's what the Freedom Phone did as well.
Well,
I can't imagine they did a whole lot more than just swap out a few components to get DuckDuckGo to be the bar as the default widget.
yep.
Like, because a widget is a download. It's not a terribly complicated thing. So all you have to do is just have it there by default, and there it is.
Well, it's kind of a shame too bringing up Huawei because I liked some of their phone designs. They actually had some really good looking hardware.
They did, and well, like it's nuts. Like so, actually,
Well, I mean, if you're gonna spy on people, you want them to
yeah.
have sexy hardware, right?
That's the
I
worst
mean,
part. Like their hardware, like it looked pretty good. It's just at the same
yeah,
time, everything that happened on it was being recorded by China.
yeah, and that is the sad part. But
I
like
mean, for some
they
people, I'm sure that's a kink and that's the sexiest part of the hardware. But
they
for the rest
had
of the world, no.
I was so mad that they had that whole thing because they if you take a look through the folding phones or the foldable
Yeah.
phones, they had probably one of the nicest designs for a foldable phone out of
Okay.
all of the ones that I've seen. Their hinge design was the best. They had
Okay. So they actually like the folding screen phones.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
It was absolutely
Although
gorgeous.
I thought they had issues with their phones with the screens getting a crease in them, or snapping. I know
Huawei?
Samsung had that issue.
Samsung had that
Um,
issue. I don't think that was the case with Huawei. So as I remember it, I think they designed so where Samsung would fold the phone inward upon itself. Huawei did it on the exterior of the phone. So they didn't stress the screen as much because they didn't have as severe of a bend. Something like that.
Hmm. Are you doing like a Hyundai thing here with Huawei?
he is.
Okay, just checking.
He's pronouncing it like an asshole for a reason. I don't know what the reason is yet.
He probably wants to
Because
drive
I'm
a
the best
Jaguar.
way of pronouncing it. What is it? I think it's it's the Mate X. Yeah, that was a sexy looking phone.
I thought it was the mate, which is funny because I also think pronouncing something like Sade as Sade is uselessly pretentious.
No,
Well,
that's fair. That's fair.
Then
And
again, mate is actually like a drink in Latin America, so I could easily see that was the. Well, actually, I know that's the reason why because it was marketed all over the place down there.
now that said, there are some indie developers out of China that
yeah,
are
that's what it was.
pretty
They
decent. Like
they
there's
folded
this.
it. They folded the screen around the back. That was what they did. So it
Oh
wasn't as
yeah, yeah,
severe
where
of a bend.
they just yeah, I remember which one you're talking about.
Yeah, and it was a beautiful design. Beautiful design. So you don't get the creases and you don't get the
So which guys in that photo aren't feds, by the way?
I think that might be the ones that aren't.
But only three of them weren't feds.
It might have been 20 or maybe
Okay.
what
21,
is
but that's absolutely quite ridiculous.
Okay, so if these are okay, so these are the ones that aren't feds.
Maybe.
Maybe.
Yeah, this is from BuzzFeed, so I mean, really, who knows?
what are
Oh,
these
fucking.
unihertz things?
Oh, yeah, I linked that because that's a kind of an indie developer out of China that I kind of like. I would be more trustworthy of getting their products than I would something like Huawei.
Rugged phone.
Yeah,
Then again, well, that's the thing. Hold on. So do they have more than 50 employees?
of course. But yes, I
Then
know
they
that
then
require
they're
as soon as you hit
okay.
more than 50, you've got to
Once you hit the 50, you've got yourself a commissar among you.
yeah, it is literally required. It would be really interesting if they had 49 employees. I wonder how many people do
That would
that.
be hilarious if they did it as like shell companies. I'm sure that kind of crap gets cracked down on though.
I'm sure it does.
Oh, undoubtedly. China doesn't like people playing games with not following orders. Oh, speaking of not following orders, there's some good news out of the ATF nominee from the skin suit in
Oh,
charge,
he's
Chipman.
gonna get like is he gonna get like the axe or something or what?
Well, even CNN is saying things are looking not too great for old David Chipman. So what's come out
Good. Welcome.
relatively recently? Oh yeah, no, he is a murdering psychopath that
What
hates.
is this?
What's what? David Chipman?
Who?
Oh,
Yeah.
he's the proposed head of the ATF. He's
He's the
posed in
Waco
front
man.
of he is like the Waco guy in the pictures. He's the one that's standing in front of the charred remains.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's him.
Oh.
And he's gone back and deleted many interesting things from his Twitter profile, but he's had a lot of very choice things to say about human rights and how he is really really not a fan. So it's all the better. But anyway, something pretty damning came out recently. I'm trying to find that right now. But what's happened is his wife recently worked for some government body, and okay, you'll have to give me just a half second to look this up, but she was recently employed somewhere and all of a sudden just kind of quit because, oh, hey, yeah, he's up for that job, and that could look really bad.
What
But
was the company that she worked for?
I believe the government. So let me. There's so much that's been happening lately. Okay. His wife worked at the ATF in a leadership role last week, and up until the beginning of the month, and then suddenly retired right when he gets pulled up. She was a division chief from November 2017 for 3 years and 8 months. So basically, right up to the line.
So what? I don't understand what the issue is.
Oh, that's a huge conflict of interest. He didn't disclose that at all. That he had not
Wait,
merely
did he
family.
lie on a government form? Hold the fucking phone there, man.
Oh yeah, and he also lost his gun too. But yeah, he did.
Yeah, right. Let's
So
not bring that one up.
he worked for the ATF.
No, he worked
And
for Everytown for gun control.
ah,
His wife worked for the ATF.
oh yeah, that's a conflict of interest.
Yeah. So, yeah, things get kind of ugly and complicated there. Basically, this guy he's Stasi in waiting, absolutely. And
Yes, yeah, Shipman's idea is of a safe country is one where all we have to fight back with is sticks.
yeah,
Even then, they can't be more than an inch long.
Hmm.
yeah, these
Like
people are
stick.
totalitarian fascists,
Well,
which is ironic.
Going back to the earlier subject of the election, man, do I hope that we do not turn into a position where we find out there was all kinds of fucking shady shit. Because as fascist as these people are, and as much as I'd love them out, like this is gonna be a shit show. 2022 and 2024 are gonna be shit shows if
they don't let this work the way it's supposed to work, things are going to get so horrifyingly ugly that these
Yep.
people don't understand what they've done. They really don't. Already, they
No, they
don't
don't.
understand what they've done.
They have
They're
no
starting
idea.
to get some conception, and you can see it in the desperation of their acts.
Yep.
Yeah.
And
Just say that
speaking
bullet
of
sales
desperate
are still
acts,
going.
this came out just
Boy.
almost a week ago, just a few days shy. So you had mentioned Vaush.
Yeah.
So it would appear that he's been literal controlled opposition to basically keep the commies in line, running with a very specific narrative.
Oh.
Yeah, this comes from Bread Tube Serves Imperialism, book on Amazon, but of all people in the world,
I gotta hit the head real quick, but I'll be listening.
yeah. So I'll just read this. Well, yeah, I'll read this brief interlude here. Ian Vaush Kaczynski, a video game playing child of wealth from Beverly Hills. I won't continue to name the name because I know how the algorithm is. The individual, known as Val, she had been appointed by YouTube algorithms as the unofficial spokesperson for Marxist, socialist, and leftist thought. His father is X, a figure in Hollywood who can be located with great ease. Early life looked up and all that without any difficulty. Figure in Hollywood who describes himself on LinkedIn as a director, visual effects artist, supervisor with 20 years in production. In earlier years, he went by another name, an Irish name, and he was in a lot of Destiny streams, if anyone's familiar with him, and he had a bit of a different narrative at that time. I am paraphrasing because, I don't want to get this taken down, and it does go up on YouTube and all. So he's put out all sorts of silly and ridiculous things, secret Nazi conspiracies. Trump is a controlled Russian agent. All this. You can actually read all of this again in BreadTube Serves Imperialism. It looks like a very interesting and fun book. But anyway, a website by the name of Drama Report published an article on the 8th of September last year from a former friend who states, as we had mentioned previously, that he had admitted to viewing child pornography, and she then reported him to the FBI. Now, as you'll note, up till now, he's not been arrested or taken in for questioning by the FBI, so...
Hold the fucking phone.
Yeah?
Whoa, I heard that correct, did I not?
You did. You heard that correct. On the Drama Report
boy.
website of September 8th, 2020. Former friend
Well,
of...
they're about as good as like Hollywood Reporter though, aren't they?
So at least twice as good as CNN?
Okay, that's fair.
I mean... And of course, he's admitted to sexually threatening and harassing at least one person. So,
Is this Vosh himself, or is this his father? I'm just trying to make sure I'm not losing the plot.
Oh, Vosh himself. It's just that his father happens to be attached to Hollywood.
Pedowood.
Yeah, indeed. But, in some of his streams, it continues here that you can watch as his handlers give him bad information, where he's reading quotes purportedly from Mao Zedong, Lenin, and Marx. Excuse my terrible radio enunciation. Goodness. Which he said justified its support for the Democratic Party of the U.S. in the 2020 elections. But then, as you're watching, it looks like somebody else has prepared these, and he doesn't actually know a goddamn thing about a single thing he's talking about. But he still comes off as a smug asshole who knows everything. So, there you have it.
That's kind of his MO.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. But
apparently, aside from touching kids.
Yeah. Or, well, no. Viewing the touching of kids. We can only say that has been confirmed. We can't say anything more than the alleged touching of children. Which I heard from an anonymous source familiar with Vauch's thinking that is the kind of thing that he would do. And I mean, that is the standard for reporting these days. So you heard it here first. Like I said, I am familiar with those that are also familiar with the types of thinking that a man like Vauch would do. And I take it on their authority that they are correct in this estimation of the situation. So, you heard it here first, folks.
Mr. Nuss, first name Anani.
Yeah. I mean, what can we say?
I mean,
apparently there's
dance an Irish jig.
Oh, right. And the other thing that we can say, so the New York Times had a really excellent byline. Again, a couple days ago. I'll just read it to you because it's so good. Shouting freedom and other anti-government slogans, hundreds of Cubans took to the streets in cities around the country on Sunday to protest food and medicine shortages in a remarkable eruption of discontent discontent, pardon, not seen in nearly 30 years. So, yeah, that's all it was. Never mind that they're, shouting freedom from
I think
communism.
my favorite part is that they were waving the American flag, and not
You
one
know,
fucking person in American leadership, not one from the figurehead branch of our country could come out and say that was a good thing.
you know what I thought was the funniest part of this whole thing, right? It was when this was initially reported. When it was initially reported, the line that the New York Times was trying to go with, the line that Twitter was trying to
Oh my
go with,
god.
was that they were protesting the lack of vaccines.
Yeah,
Oh,
that
yeah.
was fucking amazing.
That was the
And it was
funniest
just
thing.
the handling of the pandemic. It had nothing to do with anything else. Just the handling of the pandemic.
Well, and then if you only read the headlines, you would think that the Cuban people were out there protesting a lack of vaccines. Right? That was what you were supposed to walk away with. Whereas you go and read the article, and they're protesting food and specifically healthcare, and more importantly, the fact that their healthcare is super shitty. It was just the most beautiful story
But you see,
creation.
according to the fat bastard, what's his name? They had the best healthcare in the world, except that's the doctors that they export to other countries, not the ones that are actually there.
Oh,
Ah, well,
yeah, like how that one Castro flew to America to get heart surgery. Yeah, they do
yeah.
have the best doctors.
But that was the funniest part, was that Twitter, the New York Times, all the rest of them were reporting that the reason
Yeah,
these people were protesting was predominantly a lack of vaccines from COVID. And I'm
it's
like,
fucking
first
amazing.
off, first off, you motherfuckers are on an embargoed island. You can't honestly come forward and tell me that COVID is like the world's crisis in fucking
Well, that's just
Cuba.
the thing, though, is the U.S. embargoes them. They're free to trade with China and Russia and Venezuela to their heart's content,
Oh,
and they do
speaking of,
anyway,
actually,
regardless of
before I
any
forget,
embargoes.
as a matter of fact, there are some unconfirmed reports of fairly stout Eastern European looking men showing up in Cuba at this time. I don't have any more on
I
that, but
Yeah,
I have heard some unconfirmed reports from, my not great sources.
my guess is that's true, especially because China and China, I think we talked about this before too, where China and Russia had put in ICBMs in Venezuela.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, sorry, not like the siloed ICBMs, but the uprights that you can truck around. And
Yeah, the mobile
like
units.
without hitting the headlines in the U.S., mind you,
No,
at all.
I remember reading about that, but it didn't. Nothing. Nobody. Any major names said anything about it, other than maybe Fox once.
Well,
Maybe.
I suspect I when they turn around and Cuba decided to get up and start rioting, my when they sat there and they did the vaccine stuff, that was really funny because the left just doesn't want to acknowledge that a whole bunch of people are
Oh, and
protesting
on that
socialism.
note, some of the reporting on that, like now look here, Cubans. I mean, you're running a real risk of having a super spreader event by doing this.
Oh my
Mm,
God, yes. There's that too.
yep.
And they're talking about like the Cubans in Miami and elsewhere. Um, it's the same exact thing they did with the Trump rallies.
Yes, they did. This is quite literally, as long
Same
as you do
exact
what we
shit.
say, you're not spreading it. As long as you don't do what we say, you are spreading it. At this point, this is going to be a major problem to the medical community and to the political community if they choose to go with this, because it's nakedly that they aren't following their
Well, the thing
technical
is,
judgment.
this has all been crying wolf in the worst possible
Oh,
time because
absolutely.
there is actually a fucking wolf out there.
Absolutely. But
Like,
the funny part to this whole entire
there's
thing
gonna
is,
be another one of these things that comes along, and the same shit's gonna happen. But what about the one that actually shows up where it is like airborne Ebola? You know, what happens if
yep,
Dustin Hoffman's not there to save your ass, and the news calls it wrong half the time because they're
yep.
a whole bunch of political hacks?
Yeah.
Yep.
What?
Like,
Yeah. What
people are just
happens
gonna
when the
die en
next
masse.
thing escapes from a Chinese biohazard level 4 lab?
And this is exactly why when Craig and I get mad, even though we disagree about a lot of the stuff, the specifics into this whole entire thing, this is why we both share equal anger towards the political establishment here. Because at the end of the day, the reason technical experts are relied upon is for their technical judgment, and that is to keep your ass out of the fire. That is why you contact someone like me, right? Yeah, I will put, certain people into the naked showers happily because they're making me miserable. But I swear to God, if there was any actual legitimate risk to such an individual from observing naked showers, I would come up with 1,000 reasons why it couldn't be done. Right? That is our job as technical experts. And sitting there and having people play these fucking games with politics, oh no, you're not doing what I want you to do, and therefore, you are creating a super spreader event versus not, no, you are doing what we want you to say. Now it's not a super spreader event.
Yeah.
This is the kind of shit that causes failure in respect and trust in the scientific
It
community
also eventually
and the
causes
advancement
deaths.
of scientism. And this is what kills people. This is like the precursor to what kills people. It's not the first time that it happens that it's a problem. It's the second, third, and fourth time where people
Yeah.
stop paying attention to actual technical experts providing actual technical
It's
basis
why
for their
when you do like a
actual
safety talk,
opinions.
it's why when you do a safety talk, you've got to like get to the point where you've penetrated into their skulls and gotten them to pay
Yep.
attention. You can't come out there and do fire and brimstone and shout because then you're
Right.
gonna get tuned out. You can't
Yep.
come out there and say, yeah, it's no big deal, because no one's gonna listen to you anyway. So you got to go out
Right.
there and actually say what it is.
You have to say
And if
what
you
it
don't
is.
say what the
You have
fuck
to
it
say what
is,
the
then
cause is. You have to sit there and go into the analysis, but you don't tell a fucking story. And that is
right,
technical opinion.
Well, and this falls back to The Boy Who Cried Wolf. I mean, it's such a
Yep.
classic.
yeah. But
But
again,
what
the
I
wolf is actually there right now. That's the problem.
Well, that's
what
well,
I
that's
Like,
exactly what I mean. It's like you cry wolf too
they
many
can't they
times.
can't even like they can't even like look at the wolf and say, "Oh God, there's a wolf. Let's react." Instead, it's you have some asshole saying, "Yeah, but that wolf is white, so
the
he's not
the
actually a problem. In
the
fact,
great
you should
irony
all
here
be upset at the wolf for oppressing you."
the great irony here in this whole entire beautiful thing is that I honestly question. So I've mentioned this before, and everybody kind of sits there and rolls their eyes, and on this show and elsewhere, right? I've hypothesized that the Democratic Party wanted to regain control over all the socialists once they won, because they can't, if they don't maintain control, they can't stay in power. And I gotta wonder, when it comes to this fucking Cuba thing, whether or not this is legitimately to like provide a counter narrative to the Marxists.
Well, that's the thing is, I don't think they're going to have like an
Yeah,
international
they've been
controlled
failing on
opposition
this
like
so
that.
badly. I don't think so. Like they've really, really dropped the ball on this one.
I don't see like having the influence over anything to do in Cuba. Like maybe the Cubans in the U.S. You could make an argument that there was like if you had the right motivations to get people to do stuff, but like I don't see an international like beyond being a crisis of opportunity. You know, because that's one thing Democrats are very good at is never letting an opportunity go to waste.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, they did fail on
So
the start out to this, so it'll be interesting to see if they can save it. But
I could see them taking this as an opportunity and then going down that road with it.
I mean,
I don't know if I
they could
see.
try and use this as a heel turn, but I honestly don't really see it out of them because they're just kind of they're too hateable, you know.
I
Well,
think that screams to your bias there.
Fair enough.
my argument was not that the Democrats will or won't use it as a heel turn. I'm saying I'm really curious whether this is an intelligence operation to try to induce a heel turn, right?
Oh, that's an
I
interesting
don't know
thought.
if they have like the man. I don't think they have the manpower on the island to do that necessarily, though, because they have like they always have. It might be that the news is covering it in a certain way, because like they annually will have protests by their freedom advocates down there.
It's
Um,
possible, but I was figuring that the news, especially after today's round, that it was the news itself that was demonstrating that they are not in compliance or in cahoots with the administration. And I was kind of thinking that, like, because it seems like this came out of nowhere. That's what it seems like to me.
In its
The
way.
Cuba thing?
I mean, you could see that something like this was coming, but yeah, you're right. That's a valid point.
From Cuba, though, like, there's lots of places where this is coming.
Well,
we have
so
had,
I mean,
like...
look at the way Venezuela was covered when Venezuela had their issues. I mean, it looks like it came out of nowhere, but it definitely was happening already. Like Guaido had already crossed the bridge, and then crossed the border, and he wasn't even to the point where he was going to go back to the bridge until later. Like that was being covered in the local news pretty well already.
I remember there was this huge lead up into the Venezuela thing. Like it was.
That's the thing is there were other things that were going on, and it looks like just the aid that was trying to cross the bridge getting burned. That happened pretty early on in that.
And that's what I remember. Like I remember with Venezuela, right? It happened slowly at first and then all at once, right? That's what I remember, right? But I do remember a constant drip out of Venezuela, various news organizations reporting on the failures of socialism in Venezuela, and then all of a sudden it just basically imploded, right? So the implosion was quick, but I remember a lead up to the whole entire thing. I have no knowledge of a lead up into Cuba. Now, granted, I'm not actively seeking out Cuban information, right?
Right.
But that's why I'm thinking like this seems to have come out of nowhere.
Well, I'll be honest. I have seen just a very little bit about this, like any kind of lead up. I will, like I said, I have seen a very, very small bit of maybe a rumbling, but this pretty much did come out of nowhere. I mean, it is to be expected. It was going to happen sooner or later. But But if anybody told you they expected this to happen now,
right,
they had knowledge that they're not sharing, or they're lying.
So if you're talking about now, as in like this week,
yeah, like
no, I
right
mean now as in like this year or within
this year, I would have said yes, it would have happened because they're already under strain from because Venezuela had collapse internally. Anywhere that's outside of like a couple of major cities in Venezuela, I think I told you this. I think before. I don't remember if it was while we were on air or on the show. But like they emptied the landfills to burn garbage for their household needs because there's no electricity, no fuel. All the gas stations they're empty to fuel. So there's actually where my girlfriend is, like clouds of garbage smoke came over the border, and it was for weeks down there. It was poor visibility because of all the fucking trash fires on the other side of the border.
Ah, that's horrible.
So yeah, apparently it stank like not only garbage but burning garbage.
Oh,
so that's,
lovely.
Yeah. So like that was a thing at the time. Like that kind of stuff is not going to allow them to respond to Cuba, who was helping them out quite a lot. So their support base from the mainland is kind of cut off.
Well, I do think,
they have also they had the pandemic on top of normal communism shortages. So
I get it.
Somewhere I would have said like middle of the year is probably going to be it, but I wouldn't have ever been able to predict like the specific month this summer. I would have thought it would have collapsed a little bit earlier, but maybe they were just kind of stringing along.
I didn't. Normally, I expect it. And this is my own personal bias. I am so used to over the last 4 years, long before this show got up and running, where we would hear something about whatever nonsense was about to occur, right? And then 6 months later, it would actually occur. And this isn't like just international events. It would be stupid shit in our nation. Like I distinctly remember the whole Trump Tower meeting email scandal.
Uh-huh.
And then
Oh, sure, yeah.
that was reported like 6 months before it all of a sudden erupted in the media. There was initial reports of like there was a meeting in Trump Tower. This was what it was about. Blah blah blah. Like 6 months, and then all of a sudden they come out and they talk about what it is. And oh yeah, by the way, I was like, oh yeah, this looks kind of like an intelligence operation, and I think that's what it ended up being, right? Wasn't it something like that?
It depends on which one you're talking about, but I know which one you're talking about that was.
The email.
Oh yeah, sure.
It think of an intelligence operation just because they were saying they were embedding things within the text of the email that was like, okay, I see that there, but if I was not reading it, I wouldn't. Like it was set up specifically to generate annoying press coverage.
Oh yeah, almost undoubtedly. Just looking at it at the time, even without having the hindsight that we do today, you can look at it and just say there's something fucky here.
Yep.
I mean, you just could.
But in any case, boys and girls, it is 12:30.
Yep, it's about time to wrap it up.
It is about time to wrap.
Fair enough.
As much as I love you both, you do not provide my snuggles or my paycheck.
I suppose that's fair.
That's your dog's job.
I assure you that the only two people that I listen to on when I go to bed are the person who writes my salary and the person I have sex with. And you are neither of those two people, so it's bedtime.
Well, I would like to get one day that I can offer you more money than the place you're working, but I don't really think that's a reasonable goal. I mean, I'm gonna have to get up to like Joe Rogan levels if I'm gonna do that.
You should have picked a couple of janitors instead of us.
Right? No, that just no. You just aim for the stars. Might as well. You might even reach them one day. So,
to be honest though, I as frustrated as I get with my job, I really like it.
Oh yeah, I mean, you wouldn't be there still if you didn't, right?
It's just I don't know quite how to describe it. It's a very rewarding position, and the downside is that I'm probably going to end up having to leave my job and go someplace else because the government doesn't really allow you to advance in role. That's just the way government pay scales work. So you end up having to jump around jobs, which is one of the reasons why the government is tremendously inefficient because they're basically perpetually training people to do their job.
Great.
Yup.
If they had a much more regular advancement for pay and for promotions type of pay scale, they'd retain people in position a lot longer.
No, that makes sense, but making sense is not exactly something the government's known for following through with.
It's not that, right? Like it's kind of a fixed income thing, right? So basically what ends up happening when you have a fixed income whatever, right? Is you turn around and you say, "Okay, I have given you X for your budget. Next year you are allowed to get X plus Y for your budget, right?" And so therefore that Y has to be distributed amongst everyone. And so that Y is not accounting for standard career development. Whereas if I hire for a brand new position, I can request Y plus Z, and it's a budgeting thing. So it's not like it is, and this is what you end up seeing in a lot of these cases. A stupid decision in terms of long-term outcomes is made at the interest of an alternative competing interest, right? So in this case, they're trying to be budget conscious. But the consequence of trying to be budget conscious is attrition from the positions that they're paying for, which are training and higher cost to accomplish the same job. But it's in the interest of saving taxpayer money. It's just not, it doesn't make sense on paper. If I was to turn around and try to tell somebody why they should pay everybody more and what they give them every year, have automatic promotions and automatic raises for staying in position, right? Now is to try to pitch this as a way to save money. Somebody's going to say, "Oh, that's fucking bullshit. Why are you advocating that I take, an additional what is it? Say $200,000 a year, every single year increase your previous year-on-year budget by $200,000 a year. What's that going to buy you? What they're not going to see is
Less
that it's going to
training?
buy you less training,
Yeah.
right?
What you
They're
do
not
is
going
you
to
say,
see that.
okay, how about this? Every year, we take the training budget, and anything that's left over gets used to pay the employees a gigantic ass bonus.
Well, so that's
And
the thing,
then,
right? So,
but then that bonus is included in the next year's budget, and then there's training.
but the problem that you have is each of those. This goes back to like accounting and funding streams, right? Each of those is
Yeah.
its own individual funding stream,
Yep.
and so you beg, borrow, and steal
Well,
from
I'm
one.
aware
and,
because I had to deal with this shit doing university funding. Because
Yeah.
basically, if you had to work on multiple projects, you had to sign multiple contracts for your pay,
Yep.
which was fun when I was on like what was it, 2 or 3 different projects at a time. That
Oh,
was
I can only
interesting.
imagine.
You had to like you have to report on hours, but your hours are reported by your PI, but that means that they have to either ask you or they have to guess. And sometimes your hours came down to what you were getting paid by, and instead of what projects you're working on.
Yep.
Which is not the way it's supposed to work, but it's the way it effectively has to work sometimes.
Yep. And that's kind of that's the issue. It's technically an accounting practice. It's a reasonable accounting practice. In the private sector, they run into
In the private sector, that would be called fraud.
Isn't that
Now,
funny?
In the private sector, they have so typically they get value added stuff, and so you get
Yeah.
promotions and raises based on the value added, the amount of work that you essentially accomplish. And so because you get, and you'll get you get raises, bonuses, and promotions based on the work that you contribute, whereas government pay scales, it is less about achievement and more about, like, they rank you every year for personal achievement, but it has less to do with your individual accomplishments and how much work and value you added, because it's not a business where you get value added products. It's about, how much
See,
time
that would
you're
be
in
the
position.
thing. That's the thing that they should be doing, though, is treating government like a business, so that shit gets done and that the taxpayers don't have to pay as much.
Well, that was a lot of that stuff seemed to be coming in from Trump. But
Yeah, that's been the basis of the more successful budgetary, reining ins of the past, is treating the U.S. government like it's trying to produce a product,
Yep.
the services for the U.S. people.
Well,
And
God
that
forbid.
actually got the post office under control for a number of years.
well, they did. They used to do it kind of similar to that, so that you didn't get paid for. They would budget you for an amount of work to do, right? But if you
Right.
got your project done early, you got to go home early and still collect your paycheck. And so workers used to be extremely motivated to be as efficient as possible and get work done
Right, 'cause
as
then you go
quickly as
home.
possible, because then they could go home and get paid the same wage, right? And they get to just chill out and drink their beer and whatever else. Now they turned around and they said, well, here's the smart thing. Instead, you're going to be here for 40-hour weeks every week, and you're never going to go
Yeah.
home. You're going to transfer between projects. Well, now the employee motivation is not as high, which means those projects are getting executed with less time, or are taking more time to complete in terms of actual stuff, because there's no incentive to complete them rapidly or work efficiently or effectively.
Yeah, I mean, if you're gonna have to be on the clock, might as well milk the clock.
Right, exactly. And so there's, you don't really feel like mobilizing or demobilizing for this project that day. That's perfectly fine. You can do that. You can get away with that.
Yeah, well, I can wait
because
till tomorrow.
right,
Yeah, that's
exactly.
the plumber that's gonna meet you between 10 a.m. and next Thursday.
Right. And that's, it's unfortunate that when you start telling people that you'll hear these stories about folks who used to work in that environment, and the left will come in and call it an old boys club or whatever, but it really wasn't. That was just, you get to go home, here's your bonus for getting this job done that we'd originally budgeted $10,000 for, and you got it done for $1,000. Guess what? You get $100, right? Like, the company
Right.
saves $9,000, you get $100 extra, and everybody's happy about the whole entire thing.
And once upon
And
a
that's
time.
Yeah. Or it can be like me and for a project, or my project I did in undergrad, came in under half budget and then it didn't happen.
What do you mean it didn't
That was
happen?
it didn't happen. That was a great feeling. There was competing interest that was not actually a competing interest, but there was their department was skittish about it anyway. So
Hmm.
I was building a distillation column. The department was building a building addition. Um, and so my 25 grand project, which came in on under half budget for a 60 grand estimate, initial estimate, was competing with the last $500,000 required to complete the building addition. The building addition, by the way, which was advertised as being there when I arrived 5.5 years prior to that.
Hmm.
So that was hilarious to me at the
Oh,
end, as I graduated and the building addition still wasn't done.
was it at least under construction?
They broke ground like a couple weeks after I graduated.
Ah, wow. That's
They were preparing it that entire last semester. All the ground was kind of ready, and then they got graduation done, and then they broke ground. And I graduated in winter, so it wasn't like they got it done in spring and then they had all summer to build. Like they started breaking ground during winter break.
Hmm.
So basically, they broke ground, had Christmas, and then they started again when all the students were there. Which means they probably didn't do shit for a semester, and then they had the summer.
yeah, probably.
I finally did get to go back there and see the new building edition. It looks great, mind you.
Well, oh, so they
But
did
I
finally get it done.
so and it's funny. So the company that was interested in providing the funds to the department specifically to build the column, it would have come out of discretionary funds, which is basically uh, their part of their marketing arm of things for outreach. Had nothing to do with what had already been promised and committed in their budget for the year to go towards the building addition. But I needed to know what I was doing with my life, so I went up to when I talked to the department chair. I said, "Hey, is this happening or not? I need a yes or no answer." Like either way, like I'll deal with my own emotions and shit later. Like I just need to know yes or no because I need to know if I'm going to grad school now or not.
Fair.
And he said, "If you need an answer today, then the answer has to be no." I said, "Thank you." The other
Hmm.
guy, he was an honest answer, and he told me why in the whole budget thing, and I don't have any resentment towards that. But the other guy I had talked to prior to that, at the same time, tried to tell me I was too dumb and too smart to have made that project happen. Like I
Really?
wasn't smart enough to actually make the thing and make it happen, but it was also too smart for the students who were going to run it. It's like, hold on, what?
Yeah, make up your mind, dude.
Well, there are
Who's a dick?
programs like that. There's like we have every organization has leap forward type programs,
Yeah.
and you read like what they expect, and it's like, hey, we want you to generate something that's a brand new idea. Well, I got a few of them. And then you start looking at the templates, and it's like somebody who's got a pre-planned business thing. You're like, oh
Oh
no,
well, so see the
no,
thing is, so this was I was working in the
no.
unit ops lab, and I designed so I'd actually improved experiments, and I had designed this as a new experiment as my undergrad research,
Yeah,
and I went out and I actually spoke to all the people. Like when I priced it out, I priced it out by actually talking to the
yep.
people who were going to give us the stuff at the end. Like I actually did source parts, and it was all basically good to go, but I needed a final say in order to get the money to come in from the company, and so that was where we were at. Basically, it was like, all right, we just this is going to be the shit or get off the pot moment here. I need a yes or no to actually because like people are waiting to know whether or not they're going to do stuff. If I had actually done it, I probably would have stayed around for possibly up to a year, just making sure the experiment not only worked but students could run it, etc.
Yep.
I mean, I came up with since there's two tray distillation columns in that building, and I come up with a packed column that did batch, continuous, and then just by incident of the way it was plumbed up, semi-batch. So like this thing could have done the full gamut as a packed distillation setup. It was really interesting, and I liked doing the design part of it was the entire research part of it. Like that was the whole point. So at the end, when I didn't get to make it, like oh boo hoo for me, but like I got the research part done. That was really cool.
Hmm.
Like that was my honors thesis at the end of it.
Huh.
My experience has been that you don't need to know how to do anything. You just need to know how to be able to figure out how to do everything. That has been my experience.
I mean, if you can pretty much succeed about anywhere.
It's a very useful trait. I have gotten programs up and off the ground. So not because I knew anything about what the hell I was doing. I knew literally nothing about. I was probably a negative contributor at the start. But if you learn quick, you can pick things up, pick up a ball, and make it go farther than anybody else has if you're passionate about it and you're willing to learn.
Now, passionate there does not mean you have feelings.
No.
It means you have to actually do it.
Passionate means you're like, hey, how do I get this to work? And man, let me tell you, when you interface directly with scientists, you're banging your head on the table 9 times out of 10 because you know that they know the answer to your question, but they put so many fucking caveats on it that they don't answer your fucking question. Really annoying.
Yeah, this is like when you get on my ass about when I was talking about how to do a lockdown. It's like, yeah, but there's these caveats. And I was like, shut the fuck up, I'm not done yet.
Yeah, but there's a fundamental difference, right? Your caveats are impractical. I deal with a scientist. I literally got something. I got this paper, and I tried to kick it over as a report to the oversight organization, saying, "Hey, yeah, look, I can go do this, and this counts as this." And they went, "Well, it doesn't quite say that. Look, it says suggest and may," and I'm like, "Ah, come on, you know that's the scientist just covering their ass. Come on."
It's a very common thing. So here's the thing with papers. Typically, what happens is everything that definitely happened is said that it definitely happened.
Yep.
And all the hand waviness is down to the confidence intervals on numbers. So it's at least like if it's bullshit, it's at least concretely defined statistical bullshit. All the stuff that they're not sure about though is all weasel worded to hell.
Oh, it is, and it's kind of a shame.
It's highly discouraged in engineering, especially scientific engineering, to do any of that shit. But if you're in like just chemistry,
that's because engineers get paid more money than scientists to make a decision, and that's the difference between engineers and scientists.
This is why
we get paid to say yes or no, it is or it isn't.
In scientific engineering, so like me writing papers, I basically weasel words are highly discouraged. You have to say the data showed or the data did not show.
Yep.
And you leave the weasel word bullshit up to the confidence interval or the error band on your plot or what have you.
Yep. Which is one of the reasons why
you can't do that crap otherwise.
Nope. But yeah, it's the
yeah, I mean, we've actually even talked about this a little bit in the other sciences.
Yeah.
You see, this spectra is likely to have been... No. This only comes from one source. We know what that source is. It's this.
Right.
You agree it's this. You agree it's this because all of this other information that you're providing from all of these other daughter products and everything else says it's this. So just say it is. That's all you need to do.
Yeah.
Nope. Like you see, with stuff like that, typically what will happen in like an engineering paper is here's the probability distribution. Here's where the tails overlap for the distribution of products of this observed circumstance and this known source that was studied.
Yep.
Here's the distribution. Here's all other possible sources that would have been likely.
Right.
And here's the greatest match, and here's the confidence intervals where they overlap. Done.
Which, by the way, is why when either Craig or I sit there and take a look at climate change stuff, that's why we go, hey, that's fucking bullshit, because when you start taking a look at, they are very, very sure of themselves all over the place, despite the fact that their confidence intervals and their statistical uncertainties being way larger than any other scientific field ever.
Well,
so you don't.
The plot is a problem.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah.
And if it includes 0, you observed nothing.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yep.
that is something noteworthy.
Or predicted nothing.
If your range of possible values is plus or minus 50% of your median value, you don't know what you're talking about. That's just the truth. If you're plus or minus 50%, you're wrong.
Yeah, 1, 2, 3, maybe even 10%. It's like, okay, well, you're getting
Yep.
into a bit of a margin of error there, but when you're going half again as much, yeah, you've.
So
Yep.
there's a value that you calculate. There's 2 values you calculate really when you're doing a statistical analysis on these kind of things. And this is included in error propagation later on, or just if you're doing base measurements. The very first thing you kind of calculate after you get your base statistic is the relative standard deviation and the relative confidence interval. Same exact principle for both of them. Just one of them involves the t-score multiplication jazz. But you divide the confidence or the standard deviation. You divide those by the mean value, and then you report that. You usually report that value if you're going to report it in like parts per thousand or parts per million. And if you have if you were bang on something, you might be able to do parts per trillion, but that's kind of unless it's one of those things where it's generally that accurate, you got something fucked up elsewhere.
Yeah,
Or you
that's
got lucky.
pretty precise.
But like usually parts per thousand is okay. That's like, but if your RSD or your RCI is greater than 1, you've got a problem because that definitely means you included 0 in your interval. So like if you look at the difference between 2 things and your difference has a plus or minus on it that includes 0, you observed no difference. Period. Always. That's the way it works. When they're talking about their temperature deviations from some year, and the error bars on the prediction are off of the plot, that means that they include 0. Because the line through the middle of the plot is 0, and if the error bars are so big they're off the sides of the plot, they passed 0. Like, end of story.
Well, not unlike how some of the PCR tests were gamed. They just ran through far too many iterations to actually get the false positives that they were after for some cases.
Well, I mean, so we went over how those tests work in general already, like the structure of them, and they have to tune that, what the number of repetitions you need to get to get
to get good real numbers, yeah.
To get a good result, yeah. Like, so where they set the bar on that has to be that's like that month of lag at the very beginning where they were trying to figure out the tests. That was because they were running shit tons of samples through the RT-PCR and trying to get, so not QRT-PCR or qPCR, mind you. So numerical, not qualitative. So they're running the quantitative tests, but they're basically looking for when the distributions are discernible, after what value, what's the thresholds, etc. So they have to pick the number of replicates they do, and it's some number between like 10 and 20 is just a ballpark.
But they were doing up to into the 40s.
Oh yeah.
Right. So if you go on that, so like maybe, and remember they're not looking for entire strands of DNA. They're looking for a distribution of snippets.
Yep.
So it's important to have that distinction there, and it is very, very sensitive, like at the single strand level, but not after like 40 replicates. That's getting a little bit crazy.
Yep.
At that point, you can start saying that like the person had like Ebola, or like they had smallpox.
Yep.
Like so if you're, so it usually takes a few days to do a RT-PCR, and that's usually because they're doing 3 replicates for the test, and the test that takes about 18 hours per test. So that should give you an idea. And if the one cycle is about an hour to an hour and a half, depending on how they've tuned the PCR machine, that should tell you the rough quantity that they're going for in the replicates. They basically go until they get a positive result. a false positive result if it's if it is a negative test should come after a certain number of cycles. So that's
Yep.
the cycle limit. So if they don't, if they their check on whether or not the test worked is they should get a false positive after like 18 hours.
Yeah, like once
So
you
they'll run it
reach a certain level of
stuff in the pot. Yeah.
Okay, that will have to wait. Should have turned that off. Sorry.
Yeah. We are at the point where it is time for bed.
Fair
Yes.
enough.
It is one.
It is 1.
It is that. We are all on the East Coast. So
I'm trying to police a dog and a cat.
if you guys have
I stepped
anything
on the
you want
cat. He
to
was
tell
freaking
people to...
out.
Oh, that's no good. If
So
there's
now
anything
he
you were
took
wanting anybody to
the
check
dog.
out or anything, go ahead and share that now. Otherwise, I'm going to...
I'll check out your
A
mom.
book.
There you go. It is obviously getting late. So you can...
Check out this ass.
There we go.
But only if you're the one ensuring compliance at the site.
Absolutely. Okay, let me just fix this because who the fuck calls right after somebody else at 1 in the morning? I mean, what the fuck, people?
Yeah, you gotta.
There.
Hope they're not gonna keep doing that to you tonight.
Yeah, I cannot deal with that. That's ridiculous. Anyway, so, yeah, you can, I guess, we'll go ahead and wrap and I'll share an interesting article with everybody after you guys get off of here. So, this
Okay.
is Steve and Craig. You can find Steve at Ratman720. Good luck. You can find Craig at CraigBob99 just about everywhere and actually can get in touch with him or myself. And was there anything you guys were wanting to say before I just wrap up the show?
Oh, good to go.
That's an excellent reminder that maybe I should go and check my mines. And Gab. I went ahead and I got myself a locals thing just for shits and grins to see what's going on over there.
Oh,
So
yeah,
that
that's
one
the new
is
thing. I'll have to check that out
Yeah.
myself.
that one's not CraigBob9. Well, so my account on there is CraigBob99, but the site I made is lmao.locals.com because I didn't realize that when you make one of those things, you're not allowed to make more than one community.
Well, hey, you got a good one at least.
So my community is lmao.locals.com.
Classy. I like it.
I was gonna make it like quadruple X, and then I was like, oh, that's probably stupid.
Well, it happens. But no, you got a good one. You got a good one. That's classy. I like it. I like it.
Yeah.
I've got. You missed out on Baked Alaska. Too bad. Too bad.
Tough shit.
Well, fellas, I'll let you get out of here, and I'll share this other semi-interesting article, or very interesting article. I don't know, with everybody else.
All right.
And been a pleasure, guys. Talk to you soon.
Have a good night, guys.
Have a good night.
All right. So, in relation to what was talked about earlier, Georgia State Secretary Raffensperger has called out basically everybody responsible for the election there. They're saying that they need to be fired because of all this garbage that's happened.
Which sounds fantastic, except it's just nothing more than saying these people should be fired for their incompetence, which is great if, that's the actual cause of the whole entire thing and that would actually fix anything.
Right. Yeah. No.
And again, if it's on the order of like 200 votes that got double scanned, I'm not worried. Like it doesn't faze me, it doesn't bother me in any way, shape, or form. If it's on the order of the 4,000 votes with a 12,000 vote margin of victory, that's a problem.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, it's starting to look kind of like that.
In any case, I will talk to you later.
A good night to you, sir.
Have a good night. Bye-bye.
All right. There we go. one last bit of an update, just to follow up on something that we had talked about earlier. In South Africa, there's nowhere to process any of the milk, so it's just getting dumped, like we saw happen here in the States when a lot of the places were shut down. So I'll have a link for that for everybody that's tuning in. And, I mean, that's thousands of gallons of, good food stuff and food products that nothing can be done with. So that's just going to... we're going to see some really bad starvation there. We really are. So, anyway, the kind of good, kind of bad, kind of whatever news. The WHO is kind of coming around to the final, we fucking told you. And they're saying, don't mix vaccines. So, don't. And as I've said, and since the guys aren't here, they can't say, hey, caveat this, caveat that. I don't recommend anything but the Janssen vax. If you're going to get any of them, get that. I don't care about the 100 new people that have got some other new thing that most of them got better from out of 12 to 13 million. If any of them are safe, the Janssen vax is safe. I wouldn't trust anything else, and, I'm not a professional by any means, but it has my endorsement for what it's worth. And with that, I'm going to sign off and wish you all well. We'll talk again soon. Look me up everywhere at that fake guy Dan. You can find my stuff on YouTube. You can find this, if you're not listening to it, on Anchor there. The fake Untitled podcast available on everything. Glad to have you here. Thanks for listening all the way to the end. And give me a follow on something. I'm everywhere except Facebook at that fake guy Dan. And look out, because this week I am definitely dropping my first NFT, and I'm going to try and have maybe one a week so that people that are interested might be able to start collecting some art on the cheap. Anyway, talk to you soon.